everyone, so today we are looking at 2.3 population composition. Our tidbit of the day is that the largest rock on the planet is in Australia. So it's actually Mount Augustus, but that's not really a mountain. It's one very huge rock, and it's located in the Australian outback. Stands more than 2,300 feet tall and can be seen from nearly 100 miles away. So our learning objectives for today are to describe the elements of population composition used by geographers, particularly looking at age structure and sex ratio. And we want to be able to explain the ways that geographers depict and analyze population composition. So the first thing we're looking at is dependency ratio. Dependency ratio is the number of people who are too old or too young to work. They are dependents, like you are probably a dependent of your parents. But essentially we're looking at under age 15 and ages 65 and older. Our working age population is a key factor in assessing development. It tells us, hey, you have this many people who depend upon you. Often that's going to mean that you are less developed, particularly if they are on the younger end, or you are able to support way more people because you work so much, or because you have such a large working population. This is really useful when we're comparing different societies over time and in different areas. So we could compare places in sub-Saharan Africa to places in Asia to places in the United States or Europe. And we could see things like very high dependency ratios in both Japan and Namibia. They're going to be very similar overall, except for in Japan, our dependency ratio skews old, and in Namibia, our dependency ratio skews young. We have lots and lots of young people in Namibia, lots and lots of older people in Japan, and very few on the other ends. That means a whole bunch of different things. So if we have a higher ratio, it means more strain on the working population. So the people who are working age have to work more, they have to work harder, they have to pay more in taxes overall. If you are a dependent, you're not in the workforce, you're not earning income, and you're not paying taxes. So somebody has to do those things. In the United States, as of 2015, our dependency ratio was only 51, so that's pretty good. That would be largely what we would expect in a well-developed country. Note that with high dependency ratios, we're putting our monies towards healthcare and social services for older and younger people, rather than spending our money in new technologies or new things to improve the country as an overall, which can be very difficult. So next up is sex ratio. This is our proportion of males to females. So the number of males per 100 females, which is always how we will look at it. We won't see a sex ratio that's looking at females to males. Always to 100 females. It's used to evaluate population composition. So what is the population makeup like? It's usually slightly more skewed towards males, so we have a little bit more in the male population. Globally, that's 101 to 1, so very, very, very slight. In North America and Europe, our sex ratio is 95 to 100, so it actually skews female. And in the rest of the world, it's 102 to 100. There's a number of reasons this happens where we get unbalanced in our sex ratio. One of them is that women die in childbirth. So when we have women who die in childbirth, they are no longer in this ratio, and therefore they're skewing to the male side. Men also emigrate, so they exit their own countries at higher rates to go find work than women do, which can throw off balance and mean that we have more men in one country and fewer men in another. So that will throw our rates off quite a bit. And another reason is that many places have a strong cultural preference for male children. This is particularly true in many Asian populations. India, for example, in 2018, for boys or for under the age of 14, we had 113 males for every 100 females. That's a huge difference. But even more striking, China also in 2018 had 128 males for every 100 females. So you have 28 40% more, a quarter more males than you have females. And that's shocking. That's a huge difference. That is not. And we see this for a number of reasons. From 1979 until 2015, China had a one-child policy. This led to strong preferences for sex selection, meaning that if a woman got pregnant and had something like an ultrasound, a gender scan, to tell the sex of the fetus, if she found out it was female, or if the family found out it was female, this might end in an abortion. Other things that might happen is if a woman was being artificially inseminated or artificially impregnated, there might be a tendency to implant only male embryos rather than leaving an option for female embryos. Another thing that might happen, and this is not limited to China, it's all over, all of these are, would be the possible female infanticide. So infanticide would be the killing of a baby who has been born. And this is particular to female babies. So this is not necessarily the mothers. This may be a family who is wanting male children overall. But if you have a female baby born, maybe you couldn't afford artificial impregnation, or you couldn't afford a gender scan, none of those things, and you waited until the baby was born, you find out it's female, then someone would take it out and kill it. The other thing that might happen would be abandonment. So China has a stereotype for girls being adopted around the world. So a lot of people who do international adoptions adopt Chinese girls. And this is one of the major reasons why, is this preference for male children. In rural China and in many ethnic minorities, there was a little asterisk, a little clause that would allow them to have 2 children if the first one was female under the one-child policy. If they found out that the second fetus was female, then it might end up in one of these abortions, an infanticide, or an abandonment that was fairly prevalent. There's some problems when this happens, and there's some causes with this. So when we have this significant preference for male children that results in the termination or loss of females, then we end up with a huge imbalance, as we're talking about here. This is going to create ripples throughout history that will continue well into the future. And even though the one-child policy ended in 2015, we're still seeing it, and we're going to see it for a very long time. Because again, 128 to 100 is a huge difference. One way that we might see this, so marriage and family are very often used to determine social status in places like China and India. And this is going to mean that we have a greater competition for brides. Unmarried men may end up with lower social or economic roles. Basically, we're throwing off the entire society because of this preference for male children. So as these men end up in these lower social and economic roles, that will have further repercussions. We could end up with women who are discriminated against because we have imported brides who are seen as less than natural born brides in various places, but are better than nothing. So it's not so much about the woman herself, it's about that she is a woman, like here is a bride. So it's very much objectifying women in this case and not seeing them for their value as human beings. So sex ratio overall is a social indicator. It affects marriage rates, it affects women's labor market participation. So if we have very few women, we're much more likely to have very few women in the workplace. It affects the socialization of men and women. It affects fertility rates, birth rates, and the natural increase rate. So we could end up seeing a dramatic decrease in all of these things. All right, so that's it. We describe the elements of population composition used by geographers, namely sex ratio and dependency ratio. And we want to be able to explain ways that geographers depict and analyze population composition. So I want you to take a couple of minutes in your notes and respond to these prompts here. So first, I want you to describe possible consequences of dependency ratios. Then I want you to explain why sex ratio of a population is an important social indicator. And finally, I want you to identify 3 factors that may cause an imbalance of a country's sex ratio. Okay, that's it for this one. Bye.